Hey everybody, welcome to the Shooting the Shit podcast, episode 1. I'm your host, Mark Haugen. This is my sidekick, Mike Friesen. We're here discussing, bantering back and forth about all that is Timberwolves basketball. We're huge fans. We're excited to let this out to the world, and hopefully you guys enjoy this as well as we do, because we love our Timberwolves.
We sure do. Mark, it's been an interesting offseason, but since this is our first episode, why don't you give yourself a quick introduction into what your Timberwolves history is?
All right, so I became a fan in the inaugural season 1989. Went to 5 games. Went there as my birthday party, December 5th or 6th, 1989 in the Metrodome. It was awesome. Kevin Harlan gave me a love for the game. He gave me a love for a 18-foot jump shot. 18-foot, nothing but net jump shot from Tony Campbell. Then fast forward to 2011, 2012, I fell in love again as the member of the Los Locos Crazy Fan section when Ricky Rubio's inaugural season came, until it came to a bitter end in March 9th, 2012 when Kobe Bryant bowled over him. But that season was epic, and I love the Timberwolves. I love when the Target Center is rocking, and the renovated Target Center will be rocking this fall with our great team in 2017.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's been an interesting offseason, but my history was that I was born in '87, so when the inaugural season happened, I was very, very young. So my earliest memories, I went to a basketball camp at the Target Center, during the Stephon Marbury years with Kevin Garnett, and so I was sitting there around 9 or 10 years old, and then I really fell in love with the game, though, unfortunately, right when we got really bad. Right in the, we're going to trade Kevin Garnett for Al Jefferson. And even slightly before that, when we're going to trade Wally Szczerbiak for Ricky Davis. And, we're just continually just getting gutted from McHale. And we'll have a conversation in the future about who was worse, Kevin McHale or David Kahn. A lot of people say David Kahn, but,
McHale wasn't too great.
McHale wasn't great either. McHale's a lot better as a coach.
He's a great coach.
He's a great coach. And Flip was a great GM, and it's almost like those two should have switched roles.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And I call myself a hopeless romantic because I've been a faithful follower through the darkest of times. And but I'm excited because the dawn is here, and let's get some light into let's get some light into the arena. Let's get some light into the situation. So let's go into that. So we're hitting draft night, and we decide we want to make a massive trade. This is such a deep draft that we pulled off getting Jimmy Butler for the number 7, which was Lauri Markkanen, Zach LaVine, and Chris Dunn. So, what did you think of that deal?
In the end, actually, even in the beginning, I thought, wow, what a steal for your Minnesota Timberwolves. We come away with Jimmy Buckets. Zach LaVine is coming off a very bad knee injury. He may not be the same player again. Chris Dunn is a long way away. And we lose our 7th pick, but we also get the 18th pick or 16th pick, and we get Jimmy Butler, who, by the way, his press conference was epic beyond epic. He comes out, they say, look, you got a problem with me? Here's my number. Whatever it was, 773, such. That, I was sold. Love Jimmy Buckets. Can't even wait for him to step on the court. Should be awesome.
Yeah, he seems to know marketing a lot better than, maybe that's what you get when you go to a big market, is they teach you how to market yourself better. But yeah, I was a little bit more devastated initially than you. I'm a big Zach LaVine fan, but after I let my emotions subside, I fell back into the same category that everyone else did. And, at this point, Zach LaVine's not a good defender. Jimmy Buckets is. And there's very few people in the NBA who can create a shot better than Jimmy Butler. I'll miss Zach shooting. But, I felt like actually the biggest loss in the deal was Chris Dunn, because I felt like we were giving up on him very young. And that level of defense, the guys like Tony Allen, they have really long careers. And, he could be like Jason Kidd in the sense that, each year his 3-point shooting goes up a point or two.
Right.
And by the end of the year,
he's amazing.
Or maybe not amazing, but at least decent, and you're getting a decent 3-point shooter with a superb defender, and those players are pretty hard to come by. But that's a long road to wait for.
And Tibbs wants to win now.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Well, and not only that, I actually feel like when you play with superb players, it actually elevates you.
Yeah.
And so I actually feel like this, at least in the meantime, it elevates Karl Anthony Towns and, at least in the meantime, Andrew Wiggins into becoming better players, because those second half droughts that we were falling into last year with veteran leadership and guys who can take control of the game, like those are gonna die away, and we're gonna see. You're gonna learn how to be a winner. You're gonna learn how to play in crunch time. You're gonna learn how to play gritty and nasty defense, and I think all of those in the short term, once again, like speed up the development of Towns and Wiggins.
Absolutely. So I think we're both agreed that Jimmy Buckets is the best thing for this team that's happened to this team in a great long time. And I would add that Tibbs is best when he has players that buy into his system. And you've got basically, if Wiggins stays around, you've got Butler and you've got Taj Gibson, who they know how to play under Tibbs' system, and I think they're going to exploit Wiggins' lack of effort on the floor at all times, and he will play 48 minutes.
Yeah, so you mentioned Taj Gibson, so let's go into free agency.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me, in Towns' first year here, we got about 10 to 15 minutes a game out of Kevin Garnett. And while Kevin Garnett was on the floor for those 10 to 15 minutes, we actually played good defense. And I feel like with Jimmy Butler and Taj Gibson out there, what we're going to get out of Taj Gibson is that he is going to bring out and show Towns and Gorgie actually how to play defense in the way that like Garnett was doing out there. Because while Gibson's not the same level of defender, he can also play twice as many minutes. And he's a better athlete than Garnett was at the end of his career, and he's going to have a bit more mobility. So like I think that you're going to see the defense dramatically increase. Like we were 26th, 27th last year. Like, I mean, getting into the top 10 is not unreasonable at this point.
Wow.
And just by adding those two pieces alone, because you've added a shutdown defender in the wing and you've added a shutdown defender in the post, and both those guys are going to be mentoring and tutoring the other guys into the Tibbs system. And I mean, even last year, like when they came out of the All-Star break, when Zach got hurt, when they took Gorgie out of the starting, or out of like those dominant minutes at the four, and they put Bielisa for like a 10 or 15 game stretch, they were like a top 3 defense in the league.
Just crazy.
And it's just amazing how far they fell apart. So I think that Taj is really going to add a lot. And he's one of those glue guys that every dominant team needs. Like it wasn't until the Miami Heat added Shane Battier and Ray Allen,
correct,
that they got the championships. I'm not sure that Golden State wins championships without Andre Iguodala or Sean Livingston.
Right.
And I just think that those are the types of guys that when you look at champions, like you need those guys in there.
I think you're right. I love it. So let's talk about the Butler trade. Let's talk about the Rubio trade.
Yeah.
What do we?
Wait, so you were more devastated than I was. So why don't you give? So Ricky's a very polarizing player. People either love him or they hate him. And you were on the side that loved him.
Yeah, I love Ricky. And again, this is another era. This is the bygone era. He was really the remnant of the Kanzi era, right? Mm-hmm. So Kanz, he was not well loved and didn't do a great job in his position. But I think Ricky Rubio was a great player. Unfortunately, he can't finish, can't really score consistently from deep, which is a problem when you have no other shooters on the team that really shoot well from deep. So. I'm going to miss him. I miss his energy. It's kind of like, it's not as bad as losing Garnett when Garnett went to Boston. But I'll miss him. But in the end, I agree with all of the decisions that are being made that, hey, we need to move forward. It's a new era. Whether it's Jeff Teague, whether it's potentially someone else might be our point guard, who knows. We are going to be a new-look team that plays great D for 48 minutes and is going to at least win 50 games. I'm saying 52 and 30. What do you say?
I said 50 and 32. So regardless, that's probably a 4 or 5 seed. For Rubio, for me, he's a very polarizing player, and I can accept him as that. I look at Ricky Rubio and I say you take the good with the bad, and every player has that, except for in some places he is so extreme, in other ways that other players are not. Like, so for instance, Jeff Teague is very good and at what he is. He's not exceptional really at anything.
Right.
But he's also not exceptionally bad at really anything. So he's one of those guys. He's kind of a glue guy who's he's gonna do good where he's gonna do it, and he's very good at the pick and roll. He's very good at finishing the basket, but he's not like Russell Westbrook good or John Wall good at finishing of the basket. He's a good shooter, but he's not Steph Curry good at shooting. He's not a good defender, but he's not Isaiah Thomas bad at defense.
Right.
So what you're looking at him is Rubio was probably a 15 to 20 point guard in his range of where he was at in the league, and Jeff Teague's a 10 to 5 or 10 to 15. So it's a slight improvement, and really in the way of the roster, his skill set benefits the team more than Ricky's did. When we traded Zach for Jimmy, we needed shooting. Well, George Hill, from it sounds like, didn't want to come here because he was worried about playing all those minutes under Tibbs. And so really, we're not paying Kyle Lowry $30 million a year. So the best option we had was Jeff Teague at the deal we got him for.
Yeah.
So we need somebody who can play the pick and roll game because, with Wiggins and Towns and Butler, all those guys can cut with the best of them at their positions, and it's just going to create a lot of mismatches. I'm just so excited to see Jeff Teague and Karl Towns doing the pick and roll with the pick and pop with Towns. It could almost be like, to me, what Stockton and Malone were for that generation. I'm really excited. So that was the Ricky Rubio trade, and we kind of got into the free agency of Jeff Teague already. So let's just get into the last piece that we've signed. We don't need to talk about the fact that we signed Anthony Brown yesterday, who's the D-League star. From what I hear, he's like in baseball, they have a term called the 4A player. It's the guy who destroys the minor leagues, but then doesn't quite translate to the major leagues.
Right.
That's what it's been sound like for Anthony Brown. So hopefully this is his year to translate, but
who knows?
Who knows? But anyway, so our last move, our big move, was that we signed kind of an iconic sixth man, Jamal Crawford.
Right. Love it.
Yeah, you love it. Why do you love it?
The guy can score. He's kind of reminds me of the microwave Vinnie Johnson. And then what was the name of the guy that we had? Was it Glenn Robinson? What was the guy that came in? He was like a spark plug back when you were in the bad losing years. I forget his name. Long story short, doesn't matter. This guy can score and can ball. Just look Jamal Crawford up on YouTube.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Watch the guy shake and bake and take people out of their jockstrap. It's the best.
Yeah,
so watch him score.
He's a 3-time sixth man of the year. They're actually talking about naming the sixth man award after him when he retires because he's won it the most in his career. So it's pretty exceptional. It's pretty exceptional what he's doing at 37. He's playing on that same level of caliber that guys like Vince Carter at later in their careers.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing to see. This will be his 18th year in the NBA. And what's crazy about that is, and I was listening to a podcast with him actually this morning, this will be his 18th head coach in 18 years.
What?
Yeah. And he was saying that. And that's pretty remarkable because that means that he has, when he came out, he was a point guard, and then he moved to the shooting guard. And he was a starter who was putting up 20 points. Then he moved to a bench player who's played at 20 minutes, or scoring 20 points a game. And then and what you're seeing is this guy survives and thrives under every circumstance. So if you ask him to sacrifice for the team, he'll sacrifice for the team. If you ask him to go out there and you say, Jamal, the starters aren't doing it today. We need 30 points out of you. He'll get you 30 points.
Right.
And what I really like about it is essentially he's Shabazz Muhammad's replacement. And while, Jamal has a bit of black hole to him, there is no escaping Shabazz's black hole. That guy is, if you fall in there, you're falling into the deepest abyss of black holes. And
right.
Yeah, so
I think he's just phenomenal in terms of fourth quarter. We need a baller. We need somebody to score for us. This is Jamal Crawford can go in there and be another look. Deadly look from three, or he beats you off the dribble and scores, and then you got Jimmy Butler. It's awesome. We're gonna have great options in the fourth quarter that we haven't had before.
Yeah, what's cool about his story too is he said that he declined deals from teams like Cleveland because he wanted to come here, because when you go to Cleveland, presumably you're going to the championship. However, he wanted to take the unselfish route and actually help the younger guys get into that place. Travel with them, journey with them, share his knowledge, share his wisdom, and then elevate them through the process. And he said he feels like he still has about 3 to 5 years left in him, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. I mean, but Vince Carter says he feels like he still has like 2 years left in him, and he'll hit like 42. So they'd be right around the same age.
It's hard to believe Vinny is that old. It's unbelievable.
He's another guy who like translated from being a freak athlete, and he's still a good athlete, into like the super well-rounded kind of jack of all trades, backup bench wing.
Yeah. So we're in fit. We both love the Crawford deal. I think it's going to be awesome. So the big news potentially is that obviously the Jeff Teague situation. He is our point guard at the moment. But then we have this rumblings that out of Cleveland that Mr. Kyrie Irving doesn't want to be there. So that is interesting. So Mike, give us the update on how the most recent developments of how things are shaping up to almost seem like laying it out for us.
Yeah, it's interesting times. Well, I mean, I think first comes to first. I think you need to acknowledge that it's amazing that an Olympian, a multi-time All-Star, is demanding a potential trade to Minnesota. That's amazing. Even if we don't get him.
Right.
The fact that someone wants to come here that's on his level, that's amazing.
Right.
I mean, before we would have to, we would have to send like our number 1 overall pick to get a player like that.
Right.
Now people are like saying, I want to go there. I mean, Jeff Teague.
As a free agent.
Yeah, Jeff Teague wanted to come here as a free agent, and I mean, the options would have been endless for him because there were so many teams out there that need point guards, and a lot of teams would be happy to have him. I mean, presumably he's better than probably, 20 other starters in the league, and 20 teams would love to have him. So it's interesting. That being said, it's going to come down to, I think, what it's going to cost. Glenn Taylor was hesitant about moving Zach, and then on the last day he said, okay, if you can get Jimmy Butler, I will trade Zach LaVine. Now, it's going to be even more interesting to see how he feels about Andrew Wiggins. Now, some of the problems with Andrew Wiggins is not necessarily his play, although he has holes in his game like everyone else does, but it's the fact that he's up for a 5-year, $145 million contract.
Right.
And do you want to spend that much money on him? Because he's going to get it regardless. And would you rather trade that for a guy like Kyrie Irving, who's on like a 2-year, $37 million left, and then trade Jeff Teague down the line and use all that money again to enter back into free agency next year and to go get yourself another stud? Because next year is actually the deepest, like, super talent pool in NBA history.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting, I mean, what would it look like if the Timberwolves said, we're going to throw out, and it's unlikely to happen, but like, what if we convinced Paul George to come here?
Right.
And you have, Irving, George, Butler, and Cat. I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, you can play any guard or big man with that lineup because you can slide George into the 4, you can slide Butler into the 4, you can play both of them at 3, Butler can play the 2. At that point, you can just say, we're just going to find like a Tony Allen type who's just going to come and play defense.
Why would Paul George come here? Didn't he
wants
just find his new home?
He doesn't want to. I'm pretty sure he's
a 1-year deal.
Well, this is last year on his contract.
Right.
He didn't want to be traded to Oklahoma City.
Right.
Presumably he wants to go to the LA.
Right.
But now we're in this era where market doesn't matter and winning does.
Right.
And if you have 30, 40 million in cap space,
right,
you already have 3 superstars on the roster.
Right.
I mean, presumably you're looking at a roster that it can compete or beat Golden State. I mean, that's very rare.
Right.
So back to logistics. I hope that they don't trade Andrew Wiggins. And
do we have to? That's my question. Do we really have to? Do you think that Cleveland has to cave to the fact that they don't have any leverage because they're backed in the corner? Now tell me about what happened with Carmelo and stuff.
Well, potentially. So there is the waiting game. So if we're gonna take wisdom from our late great Flip Saunders, you wait. And he waited with Kevin Love, and he pulled
The biggest trade ever.
Andrew Wiggins, and we got Thaddeus Young, which we translated into Kevin Garnett coming back, and then the greatest Timberwolf ever, Anthony Bennett.
And then Karl Anthony Towns.
Oh, we tanked, and we tanked, and we got Karl Anthony Towns. Yeah, and so wisdom says you can wait, and so if we wait, and what you're seeing is that now the Knicks are back on trading Melo to Houston, and the Phoenix Suns are saying we're not going to give you Joshua Jackson in there. We'll send you Eric Bledsoe. Well, do you really want Eric Bledsoe? Eric Bledsoe is like he's great for 40 games a year. Like I would love Joel Embiid, but Joel Embiid has played 40 games in the past 3 years. Like I would love Jabari Parker, but Jabari Parker, like Andrew Wiggins has tripled Jabari Parker's. Like
Jabari Parker's kind of the Andrew Bogut of the league.
He doesn't play many games. But when he's amazing. He's great. He can fill up a stat sheet like no other. He's scoring, but you get him for a third to half the year, and then he tears an ACL. Yeah. And those players, unfortunately, Milwaukee's going to have to shed out 20 to 25 million to keep Parker. And I mean, you could see Joel Embiid get a 5-year or $150 million contract like Wiggins and then play 30 games.
It's awful.
I mean, that's a terrible situation to be in. I mean, not only that, I mean, you're seeing Markelle Fultz just got injured. Simmons last year spent the whole year on the DL. Like, they have an incredibly deep roster in Philly, but it's not necessarily one that you want because there's all these plagued injuries over them.
Right. And thank God we did not draft Jahlil Okafor.
Oh my gosh!
Sorry, that was
dodged a bullet. I mean, I like our Duke guy from that draft over their Duke guy.
Right.
I mean, I like Tyus. So, but that being said, with Kyrie, you can play the waiting game, and it's going to be interesting to see, what happens. Could you in December when Jeff Teague's eligible for trade, Jeff Teague, Gorgie Jang, 2 first-round picks, and then include Cole Aldrich and Belly, and then as part of the deal, you have to take back J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert as to take their bad contracts off. I mean, that's very feasible.
Right.
I mean, to do that, to have Wiggins and Butler and Towns and Irving, I mean, jeepers.
Right. I think what you're seeing is potentially, no matter what happens with Kyrie Irving or not, we're looking at the best roster, honestly, that we've ever had.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've had good teams in the past. We could talk about them right now if you want to as we close out this great podcast. Hope you're enjoying it. Again, this is the Shooting the Shit podcast.com online.
Yeah.
You can find us there. But Mike and I love this banter back and forth. We're going to keep it going on a weekly basis. You're going to hear from us a lot. And let's talk about, let's do the top 5 shooters in Timberwolves history. Let's do it.
All right, go ahead. You name your number 1.
All right, number 1, the best shooter that we've ever had, in my opinion, is Scotty Brooks. 3-point shooter.
I will go Fred Hoiberg.
Freddie was better from deep. He was top.
Yeah,
he was top of the league.
I would include Wally Zerbiak in that list. He was a good shooter. I remember, this is a throwback. When this guy got hot, there was very few people who were better than him when he got hot. James Hot Rod Robinson.
That's who I was looking for.
Yeah,
he was the Crawford. He was the closest thing that we had to a Crawford back in the day.
I mean, J.R. Ryder in there too.
Right.
I mean,
he was streaky though.
He was. I mean, those guys are both streaky.
Right. But we just haven't had the consistency. But I think you're right. Freddie Hoiberg, the mayor from downtown, was pretty much butter.
Yeah.
In the year 2003, 2004.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't had. Unfortunately, with the offense that Flip had in there, we haven't had a lot of great shooters because Flip lived in that long 2 game.
And to be sure, that is another whole topic for another discussion. This new team is also very much a long 2 team.
It is.
In the weirdest of ways. We still don't have.
It's interesting, though. I mean, we haven't hit all 5 of ours.
So we got Scotty Brooks. We got Freddie Hoiberg. Wally.
James Hot Rod Robinson. And
Kevin Love.
Yeah, you'd have to put Kevin Love in there.
I think Kevin Love probably is number 1, honestly.
You think he's better than Fred?
Well, here's the deal. For big-time shots, when you talk about 2011, 2012,
Yeah.
There was that game against three overtime game against, or 4 overtime game against the Oklahoma City that we lost.
Yeah.
But then, yes, the Clippers game, probably my favorite.
The one he hit the 30-footer on ESPN.
This was January. Hold on, it was January 21st, Friday night, ESPN. Hubie Brown is doing the color commentator. It's the most scintillating call of a game when he hits the shot, and he's just like, "Oh, what a play! What a
Your memory of dates is just outstanding.
I'm just telling you, I was in Connecticut meeting my biological sister for the first time, and that was our moment together. I was watching that. It was epic. I'll never forget it. I was like, it was, whatever time it was like 1 a.m. in East Coast. I was so jacked.
Like in terms of big 3-point shots, though, I will take the Malik Steely bank shot over.
Oh my!
I will take that over the Kevin Love 30-footer. I mean, that one, in terms of big shots, like that to me was the big shot.
January 17th, 2000. That was that date. I'll never forget it. It was MLK Day. And Kevin Harlan, who no longer was the Timberwolves broadcaster, he was doing the game. And I'll never forget his call. He said, even on a holiday, the bank was open for the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's
a classic line.
So classic.
That's a classic line. So we were talking about so for the team though, like this year, it's gonna be interesting because one of the problems he had was with Ricky Rubio. That guy, he couldn't spread the floor.
Right.
So inherently, by bringing Jeff Teague, who's a decent 3-point shooter, in, I mean that creates some spacing in and of itself.
Right.
But then you have the fact that he can finish at the basket. That causes defense to collapse. That means that Wiggins and Butler and Towns are going to be wide open. So you're going to see, Wiggins, who's 35, just by that alone probably goes to 37. That's not even including the increase. I mean, it's not unrealistic to say that Andrew Wiggins by this year is a 38, 39% 3-point shooter.
Love it.
And then you're going to say the same thing about Jeff Teague or about Butler, and you're going to say the same thing about Towns. Like all those guys could be borderline 40% 3-point shooters, which
right.
I mean, that alone is just incredible in terms of improvement. And with Butler's work ethic and Towns' work ethic, I mean, they're going to get there.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're not going to be elite, but you're going to have 3 to 4 very good 3-point shooters out there.
Yeah. Looking forward to the season, no matter what. There's nothing but hope, nothing but love. We're excited about our Minnesota Timberwolves. Thanks for listening to the Shooting the Shit podcast. I'm Mark Haugen.
I'm Mike Friesen.
You guys have a great week.